You are on the line. I'm your host, Wadro K, with my partner in crime, the Rhino Ryan Knowles. Of course, we are going to preview the Utah Utes. This is the first Pac-12 game for ASU in the 2012 season. A lot of anticipation for this one, Rhino. Mizzou's gone. Put it behind us. Pac-12 schedule, here we come. Starts with the Utes,
Short
Rhino.
memories.
Let's
Short
preview that
memories.
offense, Rhino. Who do they got on that side of the ball?
Well, the big story, of course, is their quarterback, John Hayes, taking over for the injured Jordan Wynn. Of course, had to retire this year after another shoulder injury. It's like his third in his career. But, you know, this is still a very talented team. I mean, of course, you start with their running back, John White, who's already got 215 yards on the ground this year. Last year, over 1,515 touchdowns. And, you know, they have a new offensive coordinator in Brian Johnson. He's a young guy, likes to mix it up a little bit. You know,
Isn't the youngest coordinator in the FBS 25 years old? He's a young guy.
I believe he is, yeah. I mean,
that's pretty phenomenal right there.
People talking about ASU's coordinator, Mike Norvell, being 28.
Yeah, he's a dinosaur compared to that guy, right?
And, you know, Brian Johnson, I mean, they like to run a true pro-style offense. And, you know, they're going to try to outmuscle guys up front. With that offensive line, you know, you're going to talk about it here in a minute, but you know, they can do that with John White. You know his style of running. You know, really that's what they're a run first team. And you know, John Hayes. I mean, he can throw the ball a little bit, but he's a pocket passer. The first true one that ASU is going to face this year.
And funny, the John Hayes' journey to Salt Lake City was an unusual one, wasn't he? A junior college quarterback.
That's right.
He was going to go to college, I believe, in Nebraska. Mm-hmm. They cut their football program, and then he ended up in Salt Lake City. It's a pretty interesting story.
Yeah, very unconventional path.
Very unconventional way to become a Pac-12 starting quarterback.
He was their starter last year. You know, when Wynn couldn't play, you know, this year he's done pretty well. 350 yards, 3 touchdowns. Had a very good game against BYU. Went 18 to 27.
That's a good game. I saw it.
196 yards and 2 touchdowns. You know, you're going to need to put pressure on this guy because, I mean, he can beat you downfield if you give him time. They are a run-first team, but they do have some weapons on offense. And the big one on the outside is their sophomore receiver, Drez Anderson. So far, he's been their big target. 7 receptions, 111 yards, and a touchdown this year. And then, of course, you know, guys that we talked about last year, some familiar names for them. Devontae Christopher. He's the speed guy. 92 career receptions for the Utes, and you know, he's one of Hayes' favorite targets. If you get him out in the open field, he can burn you all the way to the house. Believe me. And
gotta control that.
Another guy, you know, of course, Reggie Dunn. They're going to line him up all over the field. He creates a real mismatch problem in the slot. They like to hand the ball off to him on those fly sweeps. So he's another guy you got a game plan around. And then their sophomore tight end, Jake Murphy, who's really turned into a weapon for them this year. 8 receptions, 86 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the season. You know, you got to watch out for this team because they're coming off. They could be riding a high right now because they're coming off of 2 very emotional games.
Big time games. Yeah, Utah State lost and BYU.
2 in-state games.
Never seen a live ball penalty until Saturday.
Oh, jeez. Yeah,
that was interesting.
Two you know, in-state rivalry games. Of course, losing to Utah State for the first time in, you know, forever practically, and then of course last week's thrilling win in the Holy War over BYU.
Holy War.
So you know, I mean, they can put some points up on the board. They do have some weapons on offense. You know, definitely gotta be on your game for them, no doubt.
Absolutely. And up front, of course, they are big, like you said, right? They like to outmuscle people. The average height is 6'3.5".
Center of
the average weight
is a good player.
Yeah, the average weight is 309 pounds. This is an NFL-sized offensive line by all means, and of course, their ground and pound. They have had to shuffle some players. Their left tackle was benched, and in his place is going to be starting Sam Brenner, who was playing at right guard, because Miles Mason apparently was ineffective at that position. So you got the right guard switching, and that creates a problem in the interior because the 2 interior guys, other than the center, who of course is a 2-time academic All-American, vying for all Pac-12 honors, that's Tavita Stevens, who is a stud. I mean, that guy started 39 games for the Utes, basically went in as a redshirt freshman and never looked back. He started 10 games as a freshman, 13 as a sophomore, 13 as a junior, and is now in his senior year. And of course, that's the guy that is their catalyst because their guard positions are fairly inexperienced. These are guys that are first-year starters. And the biggest, most inexperienced guy they got is their right tackle, who's a true freshman. And that is a big matchup for ASU. And when Carl Bradford, of course, and Junior Onyeali line up against this guy, and I'm talking about Jeremiah Putosi, who's in his first year with the Utes. He's at right tackle. You know, Bradford and O'Neal, you got to be licking their chops because the kid is big. He's 6'5", 320 pounds. But Rhino, as you know, offensive line play, especially at the Pac-12, you got to be on point. So definitely going to be some big matchups there for ASU that I think they can expose.
Yeah, and if they can, ASU cannot get blown off the ball in this game. They've got to control the run. If they take that away and make Hayes throw the ball downfield, just like last year. Remember, they had forced 5 turnovers in that game at Rice-Eccles Stadium. So if they can do something like that this year, I think that they can definitely come out with a win.
Absolutely. So that's it. The Utah offense, we previewed them, and when we get back, we're going to talk about how does ASU match up to these guys. Don't go away with Brown back. We're going to talk about some key matchups here because, Rhino, you look up and down the starting units for each side of the football, and there's going to be some great competition going on Saturday. What are your 2 biggest matchups in this game?
There's some talent on both sides of the ball, definitely. Absolutely. But as far as the Utah offense goes, John Hayes against ASU secondary. I mean, I mentioned it in the last segment. This was a game last year where ASU picked off, I believe, 3 passes. Mm-hmm. They forced a couple more fumbles. This is a game where they can really, if they can really get after it, and they can, Alden Darby, Brandon McGee. I mean, they've had success, in defending the pass and taking it the other way. If they can continue to do that, and this offense has shown itself to be, very one-dimensional at times with the run. Going to John White a little bit too often, I think. So I mean, if ASU can lock down those receivers and really make them a one-dimensional offense, I think that they can come out with a win and force some turnovers and create some opportunities for the offense. Also, speaking of John White, they're going to give him the ball at least probably 20 times in this game. And ASU's front 7 has got to be on point. That was a problem I felt like last week against Kendall Lawrence and Mizzou's quarterback, Bergstresser. Yeah, So I mean, they've got to be able to tackle in the backfield. Too many missed tackles. I felt like that was my biggest pet peeve coming out of the Mizzou game. If they want to, really limit Utah's offense, and I'm talking about 3 and outs. They've had some problems. They had some problems in that Mizzou game on 3rd down. Get them off the field. Give the offense the ball back. That's, to me, they can shut down John White. That front 7 can contain them. Throw him and Hayes through some tackles for loss. Get to the quarterback consistently. That front 7 has got to be on point for them to come out with a win. And bottom line.
And my key matchups in this offense versus defense, talking about the Utes versus Sun Devils, Rhino, I agree. It would be ASU's linebackers against John White. They got to be able to tackle this guy. They can't let him get a big head of steam going forward. They got to stop him at the line or in the backfield. Absolutely, I agree. 100% that is a big-time key matchup. And to me, the other key matchups is going to be Carl Bradford and Junior O'Neal against those tackles. Jeremiah Putasi and Sam Brenner, because I think those are very important matchups on the edges. In order to get to John Hayes, they're going to have to get around those tackles, and they got to get around them. They got to fly by them. They got to use their leverage, use their speed. Get in there and get this guy on his back because it's tough for a quarterback to make throws and receivers to make catches when the quarterback's on his back.
Bradford had a very nice game against Illinois.
Yes, he did.
Yaley's been kind of the missing man out there lately. I think he's kind of due to have a nice game.
I think maybe he's learning the defense because he didn't go to spring football and the suspension.
It would be nice to see him have an impact in this game.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. I mean, they're going to need him at some point this year to really be that impact pass rusher that he was as a freshman.
So there you have it, the key matchups to the ASU Utes as far as the offense versus defense. And when we come back, we're going to preview the Ute defense against High Octane, Mike Norvell, and Todd Graham. Don't move, we'll be right back. And we are going to preview the Ute defense against the ASU offense right now. High Octane will be meeting the Utes. Definitely got some talented players up front. Let's talk about the D-line right now because their D-line is a 4-3 alignment. They got 4 down linemen. And the stud, the man, Star Lutulele, if I said that right. 6'4",
lives up to his name.
320 flipping pounds.
Yeah.
Reminds us a lot of Haloti Nagata, who we talked about, or Nada or whatever, from the Baltimore Ravens, former Oregon stud defensive tackle.
Yep.
And I actually think that Lutulele is a little bit faster than him. He has 14 tackles, 3 sacks, is always double teamed, and in the Dama Kang Su Nada Haloti Nada style, he's able to overcome those double teams and make plays right now.
He is a game changer. He's a catalyst on that defense. I think that the defense pretty much runs through him.
Man. And he's a motor too.
Teams are gonna run away from him, and he's a good player. But one thing that ASU is gonna have to do is much like they did in the Illinois game. they're gonna need to get them on the move instead of upfield, run some misdirection,
Right.
and run outside to keep them off balance. And then start Lotulelei. He's a monster. I mean, he is a game changer on in both aspects of the game.
He doesn't quit.
And the defense.
He
He's
plays
got
the
a
play to
great
the whistle.
motor.
Absolutely.
Great motor.
And that's what you want to see as on the next level. And he's projected as a top 10 pick. Mel Kiper has him on his big board, I believe, at number 8 or number 6. Don't have the info right in front of me, but
and then
he's definitely a guy has to be accounted for every single
snap. And then
snap.
you couple him with the Kruger brothers, of course, the one playing next to him at D tackle, and then the big pass rusher on the outside, Dan Kruger. Yeah, they're formidable. They're a formidable front right there.
Yeah, actually, Dave Kruger plays defensive tackle.
That's right.
Joe Kruger plays defensive end. 6'7", 280 pounds. Is the leading sacker right now on this team. He has 3 sacks. Reminds me physically of Patrick Kearney. If people remember Patrick Kearney, played at Virginia.
Seahawks, Seattle.
Right, played at Seattle Seahawks. Played with the Atlanta Falcons. He's just a big, strong guy who is more of what I would call a power rusher. He's going to get into you. He's going to try to out-leverage you. And this is a guy that can be a load. He's going to stop the run. He's just going to be not easy to block. And that guy's going to really be on point. Someone that needs to be accounted for. And rounding out the front 4, who I think should be accounted for as well, is Nate Fakafahua, who also has 14 tackles.
Name.
And as a true sophomore, Rhino is starting for this unit. And, of course, they do have... like we said, Dave Kruger, who's a rough and tumble kind of guy, but definitely a front 4 that needs to be accounted for at all times. And Rhino, who do they have in the back 7 that stood out to you?
Yeah, well, one guy, a couple of them actually. Their middle linebacker, Dave Fagergren, was a former walk-on, was not expected to even be much of a player, but he's really risen up the depth chart. He's their leading tackler right now. He's got 22 on the season.
Wow.
And their linebacking core, they lead the team in tackles. You got Trevor Riley, the junior. He's a speed guy. He can go sideline to sideline extremely well. That outside linebacker position, he's got 18 on the season, a couple pass breakups and sack. He'll drop into pass coverage quite a bit. And then their rover linebacker, LT Filiaga, is another guy. They got a lot of Samoans and Hawaiian
fast Samoans.
They're big guys. They got some size to them.
People when they think Samoan, they think big, kind of rumble tumble kind of guy, but these guys got speed. They're like the Troy Polamalu's, the Junior Seau's,
exactly.
The Lofa Tatupus, of the world, where they're big and they also got some speed.
Exactly. And getting into the secondary, big story for the Utes coming into this game. Their starting strong safety, Brian Bletchen, will be back after missing 3 games due to a failed drug test. He's very versatile. He's an impact in the run game. Really filled out the stat sheet very well last year. 8 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 3 interceptions last year.
He's a guy that finds the ball.
Strong safety position, definitely. And then they got some other playmakers at the corner position. Senior Ryan Lacey is the leader. He's had 2 tackles for loss, interception, a forced fumble on the year. He's a playmaker out there. They're definitely going to have to watch out for him because he plays that bandit position extremely well. He comes from the nickel. So, I mean, he's definitely one to watch out for. And then they got a couple other guys in Mo Lee and Reggie Tops who definitely get after it. Definitely a ball-hawking defense for the Utes in the back 7. So, ASU is going to have to be on point for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is a very talented defense. I believe in the last 2 games against BYU and Utah State, really wasn't the defense that was putting them in the bad situations around. It was really their offense because of the miscues with the injury to their quarterback.
The defense is the strength of this team.
Right, absolutely. Without question, this is a formidable group that ASU is going to have to play 60 minutes against in order to have success. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some of those key matchups on the ASU Ute game. Pac-12 opener, man, it's exciting. Yep. We'll be right back. For the Sun Devils, a lot of key matchups in this defensive versus offensive struggle here, Rhino. And for me, it's basically easy. It's going to be Star Lotulelei against the ASU interior line.
Yeah.
We're talking about Jamil Douglas, Cody Kabensky, Andrew Sampson. That's the guy they're going to have to account for. That's the guy they're going to have to keep off of Cam Marshall, DJ Foster, Marion Grice, and most importantly, Taylor Kelly. Got to keep them in check. And of course, on that same offensive line, of course, Bryce Schwab against Joe Kruger. That's going to be a big matchup because Joe Kruger has the talent and he has the strength to be able to be very disruptive from that defensive end position. This is a game where I expect Bryce to stand up, shut that guy down, don't let him in the backfield. Make a statement this game. Express your dominance. Show your passion. Show your grit as far as the game of football. And the last key, of course, besides the offensive line is they got to ramp up the running game.
Yeah.
Got to ramp up the running game. You got to get the ball to those guys. Every time they touch the ball, they're getting more than 4 yards to carry. You got to give them more touches on the ground because I believe in this type of game the ground game is going to make all the difference. They need to get 150 yards to win.
Yeah, I think that's right. Now, sticking with Taylor Kelly, and I talked about Utah's secondary in the last segment. They got some fast, aggressive ball hawks out there, and it's one of their strengths certainly. And Kelly had coming off his first subpar game against Mizzou, had a couple of bad interceptions, including one that sealed the game for the Tigers. How's he going to bounce back? Are the receivers going to help him out? Because other than Kevin Ozier and Chris Coyle, there really hasn't been any guys that really stood out to me that have been able to come out and really make an impact. We thought Rashad Ross coming out of camp was going to be able to, he had a good solid end to 2011. We thought he was going to be able to come back. He had a couple of bad drops against Mizzou. He's going to have to come out to me and help Taylor Kelly out. And ASU's got to move the ball down the field. They've got to make first downs against this tough defense, maintain drives. And because they were only 2 of 12 on third down against Mizzou. They got to
get to 45%.
They got to improve that.
Got to get to 45%.
Taylor Kelly against Utah's secondary to me is a big matchup, one that ASU's got to win right there. So and then Cameron Marshall and ASU's running backs against the Utah front. I mean, part of it's the offensive line, but it's also the holes and the paths that the running backs have chosen. And sometimes, watching some of these plays, it's not all the offensive line. It's also the decision-making and the vision of the running backs. And, ASU's got to establish the run, like you said.
Absolutely.
Which they've struggled to do consistently against pretty much every team that they've played. I mean, they did have some success against Illinois. I would like to see them play that, neutralize Illinois' front, get them on the move them upfield, and that should open up the middle. Get them spread out a little bit.
And they don't need a lot of movement, right?
Run some misdirection.
1-2 yards backwards, and you got it.
Yeah, absolutely. If they can run some misdirection and keep them off balance, I think that will open up the middle of the field and allow them to run in between the tackles with more success.
I like it because, and I agree that this is going to be a game that's going to be decided in the trenches. And I know we say that a lot, and it sounds cliche, but it's amazing that
for the most
after
part,
120 years of football being
true.
played, it always comes down to the play of the offensive line and winning and losing the game. So, all right, those are the key matchups for this game for this Saturday. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about keys to victory. What does ASU need to do on each side of the football to get the win against the Utes? Don't go away. We'll be right back.